Our story begins on Cato Nemoidia, as Jedi Master Plo Koon was wrapping up his battle around a day or two earlier than anyone had expected. The Separatist leader here was brought into custody, and Commander Wolf was rounding up the clones as they made their final sweep through the city to make sure it was all secured for good. And Master Plo sat down inside of the hut that he'd been staying in during this long battle, and he put his Jedi Council beacon down in front of him. Within moments, he became a hologram sitting inside of his council chair, as Anakin Skywalker was standing in the middle of the chambers. Plo knew from the council briefing on his datapad what this meeting was all about. Anakin was just made the Chancellor's personal representative on the council. And now Plo watched Mace deliver the real news. Anakin will be a member of this council, but he will not be a Jedi Master. Plo and the rest of the Jedi, they could all feel Anakin's conflicting emotions as he stared at Windu with a mix of anger, confusion, sadness, disbelief, and perhaps a touch of hatred. But Master Kenobi stepped in as he and Windu helped Anakin to take a seat, and it was settled. And as Anakin was festering in his disappointment, the council continued on with their meeting. Mundi was still on Megiddo, and soon Yoda offered to go to Kashyyyk. Plo Koon was slated to return to Coruscant, but as the meeting was wrapping up, he spoke up and requested that he be allowed to go help Ahsoka on Mandalore. The mere mention of her name seemed to help Anakin calm down, and he spoke up now, saying he thinks it would be an excellent idea. Plo smiled to himself under his mask, and truly wanted what was best for his former Padawan, both emotionally and physically, and the rest of the council had no reason to say no. Plo would be assigned to Mandalore, but he was only able to bring a small squad of clone troopers, while the rest of his legion would return to Coruscant. Plo said this was acceptable, and he would bring Commander Wolf and his most trusted pack of troopers. The meeting ended, and Plo Koon would begin making final preparations here on Cato Nemoidia. He could feel that the war was coming to an end, though he still wasn't sure exactly how the war would conclude. The Yoda Rim sieges were going very well for the Republic, Dooku was dead, Grievous was on the run, and yet, something felt off. He felt it, and he was certain that the other Jedi felt it as well, but none of them said anything. It was as if this dark cloud hanging over all of them was just not being acknowledged, because deep down, they all knew that this mysterious Darth Sidious could be 10 steps ahead of them. All the Jedi can do is focus on their battles, and hope that all is revealed in time. On Coruscant, the parts would continue to move with Obi-Wan telling Anakin that he is the spy on Palpatine, and Anakin's emotions only continued to turn towards the dark side as time went on. Every step Anakin took was a step towards the ultimate plans of Darth Sidious, and Sidious would often look at his tracking of the Jedi Masters. They were spread thin across the galaxy, and this was good. Plo Koon would eventually emerge from hyperspace above Mandalore, making his way into the city with Wolf and the rest of the men all together in one ship. But as they flew down into the city, Plo quickly realized he had the perfect timing. Out above the city, Ahsoka and Maul were on some beams, barely balancing together, and Ahsoka was without her lightsabers. Maul still had his red blade, and as Ahsoka was slipping off of the edge of her beam, Maul held out his hand, giving Ahsoka one last chance to join him. Ahsoka was about to make her extremely risky move when a Republic ship flew by, and Jedi Master Plo Koon flipped out of it, landing behind Maul on the beam, cutting through it to make Maul fall through the air. The former Sith Lord screamed in anger and fear as he fell, but both Ahsoka and Maul caught him before Wolf and Rex shot Maul with a stun blast. It was over, and Ahsoka ran over to Plo, giving him a big hug. The two of them never truly got to say goodbye when Ahsoka left the Order. Plo was in the council when Ahsoka made her choice, but she had just turned and left without even really looking at him, Obi-Wan, Yoda, any of the Jedi. It was just something she had to do, and she partly blamed Plo along with the other counselors in that moment. But she was not thinking about that anymore. It was over, that time had passed, and her good friend and mentor was here now. Plo and Ahsoka would head down to the ground together, and the Mandalorians would inform the Jedi that they have the perfect way to ensure that Maul does not escape custody. This was good, and so preparations would be made to leave Mandalore in the morning and go back to Coruscant. Throughout this final night here on Mandalore, there would be no worries or fighting for the first time in a long time. The people weren't exactly pleased to have Republic clone troopers roaming the streets, but it was better than the shadow of Maul constantly living over their heads. Their planet was secure, and through the night, Ahsoka and Plo would catch up. Plo would tell Ahsoka about his handful of repetitive missions. Ahsoka would tell Plo of all of the trouble she has gotten into since leaving the Order. Plo would laugh and tell her that she really is just like her master. This would lead to Ahsoka asking how Anakin has been doing. She heard that he killed Dooku, and Plo confirmed this report, saying he doesn't know much about it, but he does know that the Council does not trust Palpatine, and they are using Anakin to get closer to him. Ahsoka knew of this too, from her meeting with Obi-Wan, and it was quite disappointing. Palpatine was Anakin's good friend, and she knew that he must be feeling extremely weird about all of it. Plo said that it wasn't his choice. Windu insisted it must be done this way, but he hopes that if the choice is presented, Anakin will choose the Jedi over Palpatine. Ahsoka didn't know what to say. All of this was hard to hear, but she could see the truth. She just wished Anakin wasn't in the middle of all of it. And as the night went on, Commanders Rex and Wolf made their way over for a late-night dinner. The four of them sat around, exchanging more stories, and talking about what life will be like after the war. Wolf said he'd always wondered what a peaceful life of farming would be like, and Plo laughed again, saying, "A farmer? Really? A man of your talents?" And Wolf smiled, as he said that the fighting is what he was made for, and fighting will always call to him, but a peaceful life would be nice. He looked to Rex and asked what about him, and Rex said he hasn't really thought about it. War is all the clones know, but the thought of pursuing a different life did excite him. Ahsoka said she couldn't imagine fighting with mindless droids like the Separatists. The clones being their own individuals, making their own choices, always inspired her, and the four of them would enjoy their final night together. When morning came around, Maul was loaded onto the Venator, and both Ahsoka and Plo would stand on the bridge as it rose up from the surface and soon jumped to hyperspace. As the ship flew through the blue space, it was quiet, peaceful, and throughout the ship, members of the Wolf Pack, Rex, and Ahsoka's half of the 501st, and members of the Coruscant Guard all roamed the ship. Plo and Ahsoka talked for a while about Anakin, and about Ahsoka possibly re-entering into the Order. She said she wants to speak with Yoda, Windu, Obi-Wan, and Anakin about all of it, and then she will make her choice. And after a while, Wolf came up to Rex, who was near the Jedi on the bridge, and said that new orders have come in for them. Rex asked the Jedi if they want to hear these orders, but they said it was alright, and Rex went with Wolf. And then, everything would begin to change. On the bridge, Ahsoka felt it. The echo across time and space of Anakin's ultimate choice rang in her ears. Plo asked what was wrong, and he too could suddenly feel a darkness in the Force. And for Wolf and Rex, it all changed as well. All of Wolf's thoughts and dreams about what he would do after the war disappeared in an instant. None of it mattered. The only thing that mattered in this entire galaxy was killing the Jedi and serving the Emperor. And Rex felt the same. Any thought to a peaceful life was now meaningless. He would destroy the Jedi. It was what he was made for. The clones never had a choice. And as Plo was centering Ahsoka back in the moment, she looked at Plo and said that something is terribly wrong with Anakin. But then the doors opened behind them, and Rex, Wolf, and the other handful of clones in here fired their blasters at the Jedi. The two of them ignited their blades, deflecting the firepower back at them, confused as to what was going on. Plo used a force push, knocking them all down for a moment, and he told Ahsoka to follow him, as they both used their lightsabers to cut a hole in the floor. Both Jedi fell down to the floor below, and they were in the barracks hallway. Dozens of clone troopers emerged from the barracks, and Plo told Ahsoka that these men have changed. Something has turned them against who they truly are, and they must do everything possible to survive. Ahsoka said she won't kill them, and Plo said they are not themselves. Perhaps killing them will put them out of this trance they're now in. And a second later, blaster fire illuminated the hallway as Plo and Ahsoka spun, weaving through the storm of blaster bolts. Their sabers spun in arcs of blue, deflecting shots back at the advancing clones. And Plo, his movements measured, precise, used wide sweeping strikes to try and clear space, while Ahsoka darted between the enemies, using the force to push them hard into the wall, perfectly deflecting blaster bolts back at the clones, hitting them in non-lethal spots. The relentless clones poured into the hall from every entrance, and to the Jedi, the clones felt like droids in the Force. They all had one single, unwavering goal: kill the Jedi. And so the Jedi fought back. Ahsoka leaped onto the wall, flipping over a squad as her twin blades slashed in a spinning movement, and Plo extended a hand, sending a crushing wave of the Force that hurled a cluster of troopers into the far wall. Sparks and smoke filled the space, alarms blared overhead, and the two of them pressed forward, sprinting through the blood-red emergency lighting of the ship's interior, navigating through the hallways towards the detention block. They got to Maul, unleashing him, and Maul understood he was no more than a distraction, baring his angry teeth at the Jedi before taking off to enact his own plans of survival. The two Jedi knew their best chance of any survival was inside of the hangar on the ship, but by the time they reached it, they realized the ship's controls were jammed by the clones. There was no way to take the ship out of hyperspace in order to escape. But, luckily, they'd freed Maul, and Maul was now in the hyperdrive room, as he used all of his power to begin ripping apart the huge hyperdrive in here. And so as Plo and Ahsoka were coming up with plans near the hangar, hiding away from the clones, their plans were made for them, as the huge ship was ripped out of hyperspace, and the emergency hangar doors were creaking open. There was but one shuttle sitting in the hangar that both of them could still get into, and so the Jedi would begin running down. Smoke and fire filled the hangar as they finally arrived, and a squad of clone troopers stood between them and salvation. Their blasters were raised, and at the front of the squad stood Wolf and Rex, and Plo used the Force to lift off their helmets. Plo and Ahsoka tried calling out to them, telling it's not too late, they can still come with them, but overriding the inhibitor chips was basically impossible, and the two commanders just called the Jedi traitors to the Empire, and they began to fire. A tear formed in Ahsoka's eye, and Plo was hit with a wave of sadness as they were deflecting the shots from their former best friends for countless missions in this war. As Plo deflected the shots, he remembered Geonosis, Felucia, all of their time together, and he decided to do what was best for Wolf. He deflected a shot right through Wolf's heart, and Wolf fell to his knees. For a split second, it was as if he came back, giving Plo a subtle nod of thanks as he died. Ahsoka couldn't bring herself to do the same with Rex, but she was able to push him away as she and Plo now ran to the shuttle. As they approached, they saw Maul running at it as well, and Plo asked for one of Ahsoka's sabers. Ahsoka handed him the smaller one, and Plo threw it spinning through the air as it sliced through Maul's shoulder and sent him crashing to the floor. Maul used his pain to get back up, and he leaped at Plo, but the Jedi Master was in full focus, slicing through Maul as he died here in the hangar, allowing Ahsoka and Plo to get into the shuttle, and they flew away into the air, as the Republic Venator would crash hard into the moon ahead of them. When they were finally safe, Ahsoka could barely speak. She was heartbroken and confused, but Plo said they must find out where else this has happened, and he placed down his council beacon inside of the shuttle. If anyone was inside of the council chambers, they would answer, and he would report this atrocity. But Plo Koon would quickly learn the truth about all of this as he turned on the council beacon, and all the way on Coruscant, inside of the Jedi Council chambers, a group of younglings were hiding in the council, hearing the constant sounds of echoing blaster fire, screams, explosions going on outside of this room. And the youngling behind Plo Koon's chair noticed the beeping coming from the beacon. The youngling wasn't sure what to do, but he pushed the button on the chair to give Plo access to the audio in this room. But immediately after, the doors opened, and the younglings would see a hooded Jedi enter this room. In space, Plo Koon heard his connection begin to work, but then he and Ahsoka could hear the audio. The youngling approached and said, "Master Skywalker, there are too many of them. What are we going to do?" And Ahsoka's heart calmed for a moment. Anakin was alive. But then the lightsaber ignited, and the most horrific sounds imaginable filled Ahsoka's ears. The screams, the dying, the lightsaber of Skywalker. Ahsoka tried calling out, but she couldn't be heard, and eventually she had to cut off the connection, looking to Plo with horror. All of this was because of Anakin. And the two of them knew their only choice was to get back to Coruscant and stop him. Hours later, inside of the Jedi Temple, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Grandmaster Yoda would be working together to shut down the message telling all Jedi to return to Coruscant. Obi-Wan came up with a new message, telling the Jedi to go into hiding, and someday, the light will return. But then Obi-Wan found the security console, and despite Yoda's warnings, Obi-Wan turned it on, and he, too, found the truth. Anakin Skywalker, his brother, the man he trained and loved, was responsible for all of this. And as Obi-Wan shut it off, the doors opened behind them as Ahsoka Tano and Plo Koon entered. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka were happy to see each other, and their grief over Anakin was shared. Yoda greeted Plo with a calm sadness, and then he told the Jedi that it is their responsibility to put a stop to the Sith. Sidious and Vader will rule this galaxy unless they do what must be done. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka both said they can't kill Anakin, but Plo stepped in and told them that Anakin is gone. Ahsoka heard proof of it. Plo told the Jedi now what he heard inside of the council chambers. The younglings called out to Anakin for help, and Anakin killed them all without mercy. He is gone, replaced only by the darkness given to him by Sidious, and he must be dealt with accordingly. Put him out of his misery. Ahsoka and Obi-Wan understood, and they would begin searching for Anakin while Yoda and Plo were coming up with their plan together to take on Sidious. Ahsoka didn't want to leave Plo, but he assured her that they will see each other again. They always do. And Ahsoka left with Kenobi. When Padme Amidala would eventually take off for Mustafar after meeting with Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, she had no clue that the two of them had snuck onto her ship and were hiding in the storage area. Padme was determined to go and find Anakin, learn the truth about all of this. He could never turn to the dark side, kill younglings, or do any of the things Obi-Wan and Ahsoka said, right? Her own doubts were creeping in, but she had to know the truth. And so, sometime later, Anakin Skywalker, now Darth Vader, stood at the edge of the Mustafar control center, his eyes flickering between molten yellow and the sad blue as they locked onto the ship descending onto the landing platform. His heart pounded with anticipation, and the ship landed. The boarding ramp lowered, revealing Padme. For a moment, the fire around Anakin faded into nothing, replaced by the warmth he felt just from seeing her. He stepped forward, his voice soft, desperate, as he told Padme they can finally make things the way they want them to be. But Padme could only ask Anakin what he has done. Her heart was breaking, and before he could answer, he saw Obi-Wan and Ahsoka emerging from the ship behind her. His expression darkened, the flicker of warmth vanishing, as he growled that she has betrayed him. Padme stepped closer, shaking her head in confusion, saying she didn't know. But then, she said that the Jedi can help to end this. Anakin spat that he is ending this. He yelled that the Jedi are traitors who want to take everything from him, from them, but they are not strong enough. Ahsoka tightened her grip on her lightsabers, telling Anakin through tears that he doesn't need to do this. She yelled that she walked away from the Jedi, but this is not the way to do it. And with a cold serpent-like voice, Anakin said he doesn't need her pity, and his lightsaber ignited with a hiss. He pushed Padme hard to the edge of the platform, then yelled that they're either with him or they're against him. Obi-Wan's jaw tightened, his own saber igniting, and he told Anakin that he already knows where they stand. The lava bubbled and roared beneath them as their confrontation reached its peak, and Anakin would lunge forward as the fight began. And on Coruscant, Darth Sidious would soon be face to face with Grandmaster Yoda and Plo Koon as a fight began there as well. The fires of Mustafar roared as Anakin clashed against Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, blades sweeping through the air. He attacked with a dark fury, forcing his former friends back with each strike. Ahsoka spun away from a downward slash, twin sabers intercepting his blade in a flash of light as she was hiding all of her emotions. Obi-Wan moved in, countering Anakin's aggressive strikes with defensive steps back. The platform beneath them trembled from the heat of the lava, sparks flying, as Anakin's movements were wild, calculated, each strike fueled by his rage and his power in the dark side. But his opponents were not so easily defeated. Ahsoka darted forward, aiming for his flank, but Anakin twisted, blocking her attack and shoving her back with a powerful force push. She barely caught herself, as Obi-Wan now lunged forward, forcing Anakin to shift his focus, as they all moved outside onto a long bridge. Meanwhile, on Coruscant, the Senate chamber was a storm of destruction. Darth Sidious stood at the center, red saber meeting Plo Koon's fierce strikes and Yoda's swift attacks. The Sith Lord cackled as he sent a torrent of lightning at Yoda, but the Grandmaster deflected it with his bare hands, channeling the energy away. Plo Koon seized the opening, lightsaber flashing in rapid swings, as he too drove Sidious back. The Sith Lord twisted, blade barely intercepting the onslaught, before unleashing another wave of dark energy. Plo staggered, but Yoda surged forward, green lightsaber cutting through the storm. The three of them moved in a blur. The fight was shaking the chamber as pods were torn from their stations and sent hurtling through the air. Sidious's fury grew. Lightning was lashing out wildly, forcing Yoda and Plo to regroup again and again. And on Mustafar, Anakin's assault grew even more frenzied as the duel carried them towards an edge of a crumbling platform over the lava. He pressed forward, with his attacks forcing Obi-Wan and Ahsoka onto the defensive, but Anakin was out of control in his anger. Ahsoka barely ducked beneath a lethal slash, sabers crossing to deflect a follow-up strike. Obi-Wan sidestepped another wild swing, movements measured, controlled, and Anakin snarled, his rage blinding him to the danger. He leapt, intending to cut Obi-Wan down from above, but Ahsoka intercepted him mid-air, blades clashing in another violent burst, and as she pushed him back, Obi-Wan struck, slicing through Anakin's defenses and landing a deep cut across his side. Anakin stumbled, gasping in pain, but he refused to fall. With another roar, he swung his lightsaber at Ahsoka, only for her to parry and twist her blade, slicing through his mechanical arm. Obi-Wan followed through again, blade cutting into Anakin's legs, and he collapsed, landing at the platform's edge, the heat from the lava scorching his body. Ahsoka ran forward as Anakin lit on fire. She wanted to help him, but Obi-Wan grabbed Ahsoka. It was too late for Anakin. On Coruscant, Sidious screamed in anger as Yoda and Plo unleashed their combined power. Plo connected with Yoda, and together they fired bolts of golden electricity from their fingertips, surging towards the Sith Lord. This power was electric judgment, and the two Jedi used it together. Sidious raised his hands, summoning his own lightning to counter, but the Jedi overpowered him. His skin burned, his robes caught fire, and his screams filled the Senate chamber as he died. And back on Mustafar, the heat of the lava consumed Anakin as he writhed in agony. His flesh was burning, his body broken. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka stood above him, their faces etched with sorrow and exhaustion. The flames reflected in their eyes as Anakin, once the hero of the Republic, was reduced to a ruined husk of his former self. They were forced to leave, and Anakin had no one coming to save him, as he was left for dead. The two of them would find Padme, and she would still be alive, and when she gave birth, Ahsoka was there essentially telling Padme that she needs her to survive, and Padme would push through the heartbreak, hugging Ahsoka when it was over. 1 year later, the galaxy would still be in recovery mode, but the people were coming together after the truth of Sidious was exposed. Ahsoka and Obi-Wan were two key members of the new Jedi Order led by Plo Koon, with Yoda as a guide. In time, the Skywalker twins would join, as their mother, Chancellor Amidala, wanted them to become Jedi and make up for Anakin's failures. Padme and Ahsoka were extremely close, and Ahsoka would train one of the children, while Obi-Wan would train the other. The galaxy would recover in time, and the Jedi were entering a new era after the horrors of Order 66. And folks, that is our story for today. To all my friends who are watching, happy Super Bowl day. Who you got? Let me know down below. Anyways, on to things. Oh, by the way, if you guys, you all know PPSW, he's an Eagles fan. If you guys are Super Bowl fans, so maybe you'll let him know the Chiefs are gonna win. Anyways, today's video. What do you guys think of this one? I really wanted to do. So I've done before just what if Plo Koon and Ahsoka were together on Mandalore, and in that one, Order 66 never comes to pass. So I wanted to do one where ultimately Order 66 does come to pass, and we kind of get some emotional scenes with Wolf, with Rex. Yeah. So really wanted to do that. Wolf, want to be a farmer, a man of his talents. Oh, shot in the heart. Rip. Maybe he'll survive next time. Whoopsies. Anyway. Anakin burns to death. Sidious burns to death. Sucks, man. Terrible stuff, truly. Anyways, let me know what you thought in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.